Hello, SuperMOOC. Jason and I are here again today. We have a really...
It feels early today.
It is early today. New comic book day. Woo! And we are here today with a very special guest, one of my dear friends and one of I'm a huge fan of, Mr. Greg Rucka.
Hi there. I'm awake and mildly caffeinated. Thank you.
And Greg is a star because he is up way earlier than we are. So we're complaining that it's early here.
That's true.
And yeah, so
just picked over to stuff. Your West Coast audience is like, there's a Google hang what? So.
Yeah.
Hang over.
It's recorded, right?
Yeah, I can watch this later on YouTube, right? Okay, great.
Exactly.
Carry on then.
Greg is writing, if you have not checked out Greg's Lady Saber on the web, it is amazing. There's a great Kickstarter, which blew the doors off of Kickstarter. I don't know if Kickstarter has doors, but if it did, it blew the doors off of them. He is writing Cyclops, again, even if you don't like Cyclops, which many people don't, he doesn't.
Read this book because you don't like Cyclops, honestly.
It's so awesome.
It's
Cyclops'
really good.
dad is just amazing. I have a huge crush on him.
You do.
Yes, I do.
You have a crush on the guys that have like the Fu Manchus, because Doctor Strange is a big, and Corsair has a big Fu Manchu.
Yeah. Corsair. That's because Corsair is awesome.
He's awesome.
See, he's a lovable rogue. You know, he's like Wolverine without the body odor and bad attitude. So.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. See.
And
he's got that Han Solo attitude.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, he's just cool. So anyway, everybody should read that because it's awesome. It's 2 issues out so far, so you have wait to catch up. And coming soon, go to your local comic book stores and pre-order Stumptown. Not the volume, but the series is coming out. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's just Stumptown had always been envisioned as an ongoing. Our plan at the start had been we would do arcs of 4 or 5 issues that would be each case, and then we'd take a couple months off, and then we'd get the next case. And for a variety of reasons, that schedule never really worked out for Matthew Southworth and myself. And about 1.5 years ago, Matthew, we finished the 2nd volume, and Matthew gave me a call, and he was like, I can't sustain this. I've got to sort of put Stumptown down and go on to other stuff. And I was like, that's fair. I mean, it was a very amicable parting. So, Oni Press and I had a chat, and we hunted around for a new artist, and Justin Greenwood's coming on the book, and we're going to try to do it. I'm not going to say monthly, but it should be a much more regular schedule. Our hope had always been that we would do 2 arcs a year, and thus far we've done 2 arcs in the course of 4 years. So this is already, closer to the schedule that we envisioned. So the new one, it starts in September. Jason's drawing it. It looks great. It's, private eye story set in Portland, Oregon. It's my great big sloppy love letter to all the PI shows of my youth. The Rockford Files and Magnum and things like that. So.
Rockford Files is so good.
Yeah.
Okay. So for this class, we are reading Lazarus.
Yay! Volume 1.
Volume 1, which is amazing. I was hooked from the very first. We were both hooked from the very, very first issue. And it's just so good. And the greatest thing is we can give the dollar books out and to people, and then they come back and buy the trade because it's so good. So we read that for our class on our social inequality chapter. And because I thought it was perfect. And so some of our students...
there's a lot of it. Yes.
Lots of social inequality.
Yes. The whole damn book is about social inequality.
What's it called? Oh, it's about social inequality. So some of our students had sent in some questions. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to start.
Yeah, fire away, because I take a long time to answer questions anyway. Seriously, I give really long answers.
I've interviewed you before.
I know. I'm the easiest interview in the world. So.
But you have great, so it's the greatest interview. Mike 2 Not Mike 1, Mike 2.
Mike 2. Mike the second.
Yeah, Mike the second. Is Lazarus a cautionary tale of social inequality, or do you think it's already taking place to a similar degree in our world?
I think it's both. I mean, in all sincerity, I think it's both. It's funny, Michael Lark, is my co-creator on the book, and I joke, when we started Lazarus, and the idea is now 3 years old, I think, maybe a little less. And when we started it, it seemed far more science fiction to us, and I read a lot of news, and it's becoming more and more documentary. I do think there are elements of, it's absolutely a cautionary tale. It's also an entertainment. I've said many other places that nobody wants a polemic. Nobody enjoys reading somebody screaming at them about, this is bad, we have to change it, oh my God. Lazarus is meant to entertain, but at the same time, that shouldn't preclude it being able to say, look, there are some real, there is far more truth in Lazarus than I am comfortable admitting. And I tend to do a lot of research for my books anyway. I did a novel called Walking Dead, which is not to be confused with the Kirkman, zombie series, which is infinitely better known. But the novel Walking Dead dealt with modern slavery and human trafficking, and it was one of those books where that research, the truth of what's actually going on, it's damning, and it does not easily get set down. And Lazarus is much the same way. We are in many ways living in year X. If you still believe the United States is a democracy, you're not paying attention. It's not. It's a plutocracy. We have lived in a plutocracy for at least a decade, if not much longer. But it's over the top now. I mean, it's just over the top, and you cannot look around and look at issues like campaign finance reform, the way politicians are lobbied, Supreme Court rulings recently, and not see that this is a country that is bought and paid for. There's been a lot of the last year has seen a lot of sort of that hidden, the phrase dark money has become more and more used, and through its use, we're now seeing things, the truth about groups like ALEC, what the Koch brothers really are doing, and what it is they own, and what it is they manipulate, and the truth behind the Tea Party. I mean, the truth that what has been sold, or what was sold as a quote-unquote grassroots movement is anything but. And, so yeah, is it a cautionary tale? Yes. Is it a documentary? Yes.
Excuse me.
Awesome.
That's
my uplifting answer. Shall we call it there, or shall we continue depressing people?
What I love is, like, with you and also Mark Wade, you just put your opinions out there, and I love that. You guys are awesome.
I've gotten too old to worry about all the people who are going to say shut up. If you're offended by what I'm saying, you don't have to watch or listen.
Exactly. And follow,
That much is still free in this country. Let's leave it at that. So.
There you go.
Our next question comes from Jeffrey Whitman, and you hit on a couple of these things in your last answer. How far do you think we are from a Lazarus-type world, and how do you choose what families would be in control, and did you consider other ethnicities for this role?
Yeah, I mean, well, let's break it down. The first part is how far are we? Was that the first part of the question? How far are we?
Yes.
You can argue we're already there. We're one or two really bad bad banking days, bad stock market days, from first world economics going entirely tits up. All right. If we have a 1929 type crash, and there are mechanisms in place to prevent that from happening, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. We're gonna be there. I mean, I really do think we're gonna be there. And all you have to do is look at the fact that the economic disparity just in the first world right now is grotesque. That a lot of people who believe they're middle class really aren't. They're lower. And that a lot of the way that the monetized sort of upper class, the owners, for lack of a better phrase, are maintaining that position is by convincing the rest of us that no, it's okay. So that's part one. What was part two? I want to hit these in sequence. Part two is
how did you choose what families would be in control, and did you consider other ethnicities for this role?
Well, yeah, that's a far more complicated question. Each of the families, and there are roughly 16 of them that I have my notes for. The 16 families of what in the series are called the Macau Accords, are in some way, shape, or form based on actual extant billionaires. All right, they are based on. You go to the Forbes website. Forbes has a list of like the top 100 billionaires in the world, and you can go through this list, and you can find their businesses. You can put them to country. You could be like, who's the richest guy in Russia, and it'll kick up, an answer according to their list, and then it'll give you all their business interests.
Wow.
The fact is that the majority of the wealth is being held by white men. Mm-hmm. I know, it's shocking. It's absolutely stunning. That is how I went about choosing the ethnicities. Not everybody is. Not every family is about white guys. But a lot of them are, because I wanted the families to represent, at least in some way, the distribution of wealth that we're in right now. More is not strictly Caucasian, right? The family More is Hispanic. We have the Souza. They're Portuguese, but they're South American. They haven't really been seen. I have notes on these. What we've seen right now are mostly the white guys. Mm-hmm. Starting issue 9, the last issue of the second arc will be out a week from today, and that'll conclude the Lift arc. And then the next issue is sort of a standalone that preps the arc to follow, which is called Conclave. And in Conclave, you're going to see a lot of the families. It's the first time that most of them have been together since the actual signing of the Macau Accords. So you will see the very few people of color. You will see that not every family is a bunch of old white guys, but most of them are. Most of them are, because most of the wealth in the world right now held by old white guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not all of it, but most of it. Here's an interesting tidbit. I love this. I came across this little factoid. Here's one for you. You'll love this, audience. Vladimir Putin is the richest political leader in the world. Now think about that, and then think about the fact that that's a list that includes people like the Sultan of Brunei.
Yeah.
Okay? He is significantly more wealthy. All right? I believe his net worth is something in the neighborhood of $40 billion.
Oh,
all right? $40 billion. This is the guy who rules Russia. This is a guy who, in the 90s, was, a lieutenant colonel in the KGB. So, how corrupt is the system? $40 billion worth, and you get a country. That's what you're dealing with. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
And you wonder, and people wonder why. I don't know why he's doing what he's doing because he can get away with it.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else.
$1 billion.
Because he owns the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I own Russia. I don't. Seriously, I don't own it.
Yeah.
I don't have.
I'm more and more realizing that Lazarus is a documentary.
It is. Like I said, even the medical stuff that we do, you know, the technology surrounding Forever, that's emergent technology. I mean, it's extrapolated to what I suppose seem like ridiculous extremes. But we've been really very careful about, you know, trying to make sure that everything we present is, if not possible, at least very plausible.
Yeah.
The genetic work done on Forever is not that far away. I mean, at all. At all.
Yeah. We just saw stuff about robots yesterday, about these discussion for probably 2 hours about robots and
about
and how
taking over.
Yeah, them taking over, and Alex and Ada worked into it. So yeah, it wasn't a recorded conversation; it was just us talking.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Okay, Kristen Funk asks, "Hi, Greg. That was
Hi.
Thanks for the great book. It was a good read.
Yay.
Where did you come up with the idea of the Lazarus figures for the families in power? And it is a fascinating concept and calls into question some bioethics issues for sure." Kind of what we were talking about.
Yeah, it calls into question more than a few bioethics questions. I don't know. The idea of these families having these dedicated protectors is, I think, the biggest conceit of the series, and it comes out of I guess the extrapolation of if 99% become the 99.9999999%, and if we are left with such a concentrated pocket of wealth that money ceases to mean anything because everything is already owned, you can't buy anything, right? Then the system has to revert, and when there is no opportunity for economic advancement or parity in that environment, it seems to me that you revert to a feudal state. You revert to a construct of monarchy to vassal, serfdom to peasants. And once you do that, well, now you're talking about dukes and princes and knights. And the knight protector then must exist for each of these monarchs. That doesn't actually carry all the way forth in the book. There are families that do not have a Lazarus. They have different mechanisms. Hawk, which you're going to see in issue 10, has no Lazarus because he's not interested in that investment of resources. And Hawk is into pharmaceuticals, so if he needs somebody to do what a Forever can do, you know, he just takes a whole bunch of waste and he gives them happy roid rage pills, and off they go. And, you know, if they die, they die, because what was the investment there?
Yes.
Which
happens. So that's not far from the truth either.
It's funny, I was talking, this is a total digression. You know, we're recording this on Wednesday morning. We're still in the group stage of the World Cup. Yesterday, Luis Suarez for Uruguay bit Cellini during the match. It's the third time that we know of that he has bitten a player during a game. This is not unique. And I was talking to my wife, Jen Van Meter, and she made the comment. She said, I have to wonder if that's not a roid rage thing.
Oh,
and it was the first time I thought of it, and I was like, wow, man, they should pop him for testing. They won't, but I would not be surprised if that is not a contributing factor. All this, sorry, yeah, 3 times that we know of.
Yeah.
That we know of. This guy has a problem. That's a big digression. There are huge bioethical questions, but you know, who's going to tell them that it's not right? I mean, again, we're living in an era right now where there is no ethical ground that says that a corporation should have the same rights as an individual. I mean, that's absurd. That is unethical and arguably immoral, right? So if you take that and you extrapolate it, well, of course it doesn't matter. You know, the dirty, dirty secret of Lazarus is that to have created forever, there are, you know, 500, 600 women who are dead because they were experimented on, harvested from, or otherwise used to make her. It's indefensible. All right, it's morally reprehensible and it's indefensible. And I would point out, and I know we're only, like I said, we're coming up on the end of the second arc. But, you know, in the coming issues and in the coming arcs, you're going to discover that Carlisle is one of the best families. They are one of the most moral families out there. Hawk is terrifying. Vasilovka in Russia is brutal. You know, it would probably not stink horribly to be under Inamura in Japan. I am, you know, you don't want to be in China under Lee. There are some of these families that are pretty nasty. You know, the conflict in Africa, especially in the southern part of the country in the book, has been a pretty ugly one. I mean, there was a good, strong family at the start. They have since been wiped out because that's one of the other things that happens. And there's a hint to it. We do a lot of back matter in the floppies. You don't see it in the trades. But a lot of the back matter is devoted to sort of the world building, and you get little bios of families. There's a bio for the family in issue 9, next week's issue, and it is hinted at in the bio that the family that's being profiled was not a signatory of the Macau Accords. And there is a sentence in the bio that says, after the destruction of the Sidorov family, this family comes into control. We don't talk about how the Sidorov family was wiped out. But, you know, but here's a little tidbit for you. Sidorov actually tried to treat people well. Guess what? They got wiped out.
Wow.
Because Vasilovka turned around and said, you're weak. We can exploit that.
Wow.
The other thing, I will say the last thing, because this jumps back to where the idea comes from. You know, there was, and this has been pointed out before, in the first golden age of sort of American plutocracy, there was a moral, at least implication to philanthropy. And we still have evidence of those things. You know, we still have Stanford, we still have Cornell. We have, you know, all of these foundations that came to, you know, the Carnegie Foundation. These come from these great, the robber barons, and I mean great as in huge, not great as in they were wonderful people. But at least they took the money and they put it back into the society to an extent. The current plutocracy, and this is why it's so bad, it's one, global, and two, it's not reinvesting. It's about greed. The goal of, for instance, organizations like ALEC, as driven by the Kochs, is to amass more wealth and power. It's not to turn back around and redistribute it. You look at, like, you know, I believe it's the Walton family that owns Walmart. Yeah. Even their philanthropy is half-assed. You know, they have, no, seriously, they have more money than God, right? Yeah. So, you know, the third generation of that family, the grandkids now are looking to do philanthropic works. So, okay, great. We want to open the biggest, most beautiful and spectacular art museum, except we're going to open it, you know, off in a far corner of, you know, Alabama or whatnot. Well, guess what? People can't get to it. So that's an ego stroke. That's not servicing communities. You know what I mean? That's not distributing the wealth. That's basically piling a whole bunch of your money up and saying, come and look at our temple. We built it for you. It's like bullshit. You built it to make yourself feel good, you know? And that is, I think, the crucial difference of where we are today. And that's one of the reasons why it's so terrifying and really so dangerous, is that with few exceptions, those who are amassing these grotesquely large percentages of global wealth are using that money solely to amass more of the global wealth, not to reinvest or redistribute it. And that's what's gonna, I mean, that's what's gonna do it. That's what's gonna tear this thing down. Because at a certain point, there's gonna be nothing left. And at a certain point, people are gonna be like, you know what? I need to eat.
Yeah.
I want to work. And you know, the bread and circuses show of, you know, political divisiveness of Fox News versus MSNBC or whatnot, it's only going to go so far. At a certain point, somebody's going to say, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian or whatnot, my kids are starving, my shoes have holes in them, you know, my city is flooding, the roads are impassable, the fire department no longer comes when my neighbor's house is burning, and goddamn it has to change. Mm-hmm. And the second that happens, if you don't think that, you know, the privileged classes, those with the wealth, are not going to be like, shut up and sit down, you're out of your mind. And they have the guns, and they have the ability to buy all the guns, you know. So, up with people.
All right, Christopher Kroll. Is it Kroll?
Kroll.
Hi, Christopher.
He asked, there are moments in Lazarus in which Forever seems to feel sympathy for the waste.
Yes.
But she stays loyal to her family throughout. What do you think it would take for a 1%er to feel sympathy for the lower class citizens?
Well, I mean, that's Christopher. You are asking what the series is about. I mean, you are, because that is the story. The story is Forever's journey. You know, if you've read the second arc at all, you have an idea as to how she was raised. Mm-hmm. In all of my work thematically, I end up at some point writing about nature versus nurture. I don't know why I do this, but I have always done this. And Forever is very much sort of the, you know, third or fourth iteration of me examining that conflict. She is a individual who was genetically created. She is born in a lab. She is not born from Abigail Carlisle, unlike her four other siblings, who are literally, mom gave birth to them. You know, Forever was made from a genetic soup, very specifically assembled. So that is, in theory, her nature. Her nature is to be what she is. She is then nurtured, she is educated to her role, her privilege, her place. And yet, we absolutely see from, you know, the first story that she has far more empathy, certainly than the rest of that privileged class around her. Mm-hmm. The question of the series is, at what point is she going to break out? At what point is she going to defy what she is supposed to be? It's going to be sooner than you think.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
It may not be in the way you think, but the moment that she is given an order by her father that she does not then fulfill, that's a big, big damn moment for her. That's a huge turning point for her. And it can be, you know, rebellions start tiny, tiny places. So.
Is it because, and I just have to ask, I feel like maybe Forever feels a little isolated, mm-hmm. And is that maybe how she sympathizes with the waste, because they are also kind of isolated?
I think it's I think that on some level you can argue that she sees a reflection of place, but I think more significantly is the fact, excuse me, that she is raised and educated in a vacuum, and once she comes into contact with a larger world, her preconceptions and her, I don't want to say, you know, and that belief system that she has been indoctrinated in is challenged. And this is something that we see, I mean, you see this all around. This is the way the world works, you know. There are studies that talk, there are reasons, for instance, that most urban centers, right, most big cities, tend to be, quote unquote, more liberal than rural areas, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things you have to learn to do if you live in New York or Chicago or San Francisco or Dallas, you know, or Indianapolis or wherever, is you're with a far greater pool of diversity. You are seeing homosexuals. You are seeing people of color, even, you know, and so everything that you are told, everything that you may have been educated in, is being challenged either overtly or more subtly. And one tends to, as a result, develop, at least socially, a more inclusive and tolerant belief system, because you need it to survive, right? Because if you are raised to believe this other is lesser, is strange, alien, wrong, and then you're dealing with it every day, that you can't maintain it, right? It's far easier to grow up in the middle of nowhere and being told that, you know what, all Jews have horns.
Yeah.
And there are people out there. There are people out there who believe that. All right. It's far harder to, you know, live in LA and go down Fairfax and be like, oh, you know what, I'm not seeing a lot of horns here. And that's one of the things that's going on with Forever. They can tell her this is what it is, and it is good, and we are doing right, and we are doing well for these people. All right, except that Forever is walking through downtown Los Angeles, and she sees the hash that her brother and sister have made of governing the region, and she sees these people who are desperate and lying in destitution, and she's like, well, one of these things is not like the other. Now, from that, she cannot necessarily go, wow, the whole system is screwed. But what she can do is she can go, wow, Jonah, my brother, failed absolutely in his mandate. Right? And that's a first step. What is the next step? Remains to be seen.
Awesome.
I'm fascinated.
I know. Now I'm like, I'm going to go and reread the whole book.
I know. I want to totally reread the whole thing.
Okay. So Donna R. asks.
Hello, Donna.
Donna R. In historical societies up until the Reformation, leaders were able to generate loyalty through a combination of power and tradition. You're born a peasant, you die a peasant. In the Lazarus world, do the families need to manufacture loyalty because the populace has historical legends of democracy and equality?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why, and again, different families do it in different ways, right? The second arc of Lazarus, the one that we're concluding next week, is called Lift. And it shows one of the mechanisms by which Carlyle not only self-perpetuates but maintains an element of control, which is there is now a quote-unquote tradition of peasants, of waste, being lifted to serf. They can be rewarded. They can. It would be the equivalent of being made, you know, a vassal, being told, here, you are titled, you have a land. One of the great things, and I mean great, not in large and not in terrific, but this as in Malcolm Carlyle was very clever when he worked out his system. If much like in feudal society, if you were born into a class, if you achieved the next class, it remained. So you want to go from waste to serf. You want that, because if you do that, you bring your family with you. And not only that, not only are you able to care for your parents, your grandparents, because now they're part of this mechanism where they are going to get housing and education and healthcare and food, but your children are in. So your children will now be educated from the get-go. They will be brought into this system, and they are given a promise of a future that is better than yours. There's a lot of ritualized stuff. You know, it's really only been about 70 years in our story since everything went entirely to pot, right? So that is 3 generations roughly.
Yeah.
There are people who remember what it was like before. But, you know, the winners rewrite history.
Yeah.
You know, all you have to do is you know, read something like 1984, and it shows a beautiful mechanism of how, you know, that history changes. You know, there are very few people who actually know the truth. You know, the symbol for the free in Carlisle territory, right? The resistance movement is a hand with a torch, right? It is liberty's hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows that. They don't know why they use it.
Oh, yeah.
See what I mean? They are not able to connect. This goes back to this statue that used to be, you know, on Liberty Island. There is no conception of that. It is far easier for them to look and go, it's a symbol of light, it's a symbol of burning this system down. Right? They don't look at it and go, oh, no, that's what America used to be. Right?
Yeah.
The number of people who can actually say, there was this thing, it was called the Constitution,
Yeah.
and can actually share that knowledge, very, very few. So, and then, and I will say, and you see it in the first arc, when Forever goes to speak to Moray, you know, the language is very ritualized.
Yes.
The language changes completely. And you're going to see a lot more of that in the Conclave arc, because there are going to be these very formal meetings where families are around the great big table and they're saying, you know, I speak to you in this manner. And then there's going to be backroom stuff where they're being like, you son of a bitch. So, you know, there is... society breaks down, you create a new society, the new society has to have rules to it.
Yes.
So, and one of the ways that you are going to implement those rules is through a sense of tradition, however false it may be. But there are people who live in our world who have no conception that it was ever any different.
Yeah.
Ever. You want to know one of the big ironies. The people who know what it was like before and they are rapidly dwindling. But the foremost amongst them are the Carlisle family, because even the youngest of them is in his 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because they're all... I mean, Malcolm is almost 130 now, I think. All right? He looks like he's in his 60s. He's almost 130. That's a guy who knows exactly what the world was like before it began its great decline. You know, and we haven't met his wife Abigail. Abigail remembers. You know, Stephen remembers. Bethany remembers, kind of. Jonah and Johanna have an idea. They know that there was a United States of America. You know, they know there was an England. They know there was, you know, Ethiopia or South Africa. They understand that there were these nations. You know, your average, you talk to your average, in quotes, waste, and they'd be like, this is the way it's always been. Mm-hmm. This is the way it's always been. This has always been Carlisle. This is what it is. So.
Yeah, they don't know any different. It's kind of like indoor plumbing right now. People don't, like, I don't understand, you know, oh, you have to go out to the bathroom? Outside, go to the bathroom? It's normal now.
Yeah, and also, frankly, to most waste, it is entirely irrelevant if it was ever different. Because it doesn't matter. It's what it is now, and what it is now sucks, and I have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. So.
Yep.
This next question comes from Steve Halen, and I think we've touched...
Hello, Steve Halen.
We've touched upon some of these, but I'm going to ask it just so I can listen to you talk some more, because I'm enjoying it. Forever seems to be symbolically representing a sort of hope for equality in the face of total corruption and absolute power. Am I way off base? What does Forever represent to you symbolically? Like I said, some of those...
Yeah, I mean, look, there's one of the big questions, and you know, we confront this over and over again, especially, this is another means of when you look around and you think about, well, this is the situation, how did we get here, and what can we do about it? One of the ways that the situation got the way it is, and it is going to continue getting worse, and so on, is that the problem seems insoluble. So it's far easier to focus on things that, are to us either solvable or pleasantly distracting. It is far easier to have an argument about who's stronger, Hulk or Thor, than it is to talk about the fact that as of August of this year, I read a study that said as of August of this year, I can't remember if it was global or European forests will have reached carbon saturation, meaning they will have pulled all of the CO2 from the atmosphere that they can in the course of the year. And that the remaining 3 months of the year, we're just dumping more of it into the atmosphere. It's not going to be removed. Okay? And if you were watching the Neil deGrasse Tyson Cosmos series, you know how bad that is. That's right? Bad. Yeah. That's horrifically bad. That is 3 months of dedicated time where we're just going to accelerate our approach to a runaway greenhouse effect. That is a threat that will destroy all life on this planet.
Absolutely.
It will wipe it all out. It's going to be gone. End of story. Gone. Nobody survives that, right? Or the things that survive that will have no memory or relevance to our civilization at all. They are microscopic organisms that maybe might be able to turn into something else on that. Okay? So that's a big damn problem.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about what we have to do to fix it. And then when we finally get a critical mass that says, you know what, we really should fix this, well, we've got a Supreme Court that says, you know what, EPA, those carbon emission standards, we like those, but the really important ones, we're not going to let you do that. Why are they not going to let you do that? Well, because there's lobbying at work, right? There's money at stake here, So it all comes together. I mean, it all comes together. I say all this by way of saying forever is going to change the world. That is the story of Lazarus. But the world is very, very damaged. And what she changes it into is going to be the best of bad options. All right?
Okay.
I mean, that's it. And it's a long journey there. But if you're expecting a happy ending, you obviously aren't reading closely.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
Never did I expect that.
It will arguably be a much better world. But there's going to be a gross price to pay. So.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. We've taken a lot of your time. Rodney Traham asks, in history, there's always been an opposition to a group or a movement. You had suffragettes for women's voter rights, Martin Luther King, the Occupy Wall Street. In Lazarus, it seems that there's very little or no opposition.
That you've seen so far, if you've only read Volume 1.
That's what he said. He said, without giving any upcoming story details away, and despite the bleak outlook of the entire arc of Lazarus so far, could an opposition to the current status quo be formed within the Waste, like a group like the Free, or would there be a more peaceful group? Would it be a greater catalyst?
Yes.
Lazarus.
Yeah, I mean, you see the Free in the second arc, and you see a very extremist element of the Free. There's a letter that runs in issue 9 that a reader from England, I think it was from Sheffield, basically wrote in to say there's a character named Angel who is effectively a terrorist. And she wrote in, this writer wrote in to say it's really problematic that he is willing to engage in, and she used the phrase, an act of lateral violence to oppose Carlyle. And, my response was, you are absolutely correct. It is really problematic. There is absolutely there's resistance all around the world. It manifests in different ways. In some places, it is allowed. It is tolerated. In other places, it is hunted unto extinction and never spoken of. In some places, it is quiet. We talked about those who remember. That is precious knowledge. And in a sort of Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451 sense, there are people out there who are passing along. Here's the thing. It is called the Bill of Rights. Keep this knowledge precious. Memorize it. Know it. There is also, and again, you see this in the second arc, there is religion. And, well, elements of different religious structure have made some gross compromises, and many of them are entirely complicit in supporting the ruling classes. There are those who, again, are going, this is effed up. How do we fix it? One of the problems is that exists in the world of Lazarus is that we have become, I mean, if you looked at the Winter Olympics, right, and you remember all the brouhaha around, oh my God, security, oh my God, terrorism, oh my God. The security apparatus that was put in place around the Sochi Olympics is a perfect example of how easily the masses can be controlled. All right? If you are willing to go that far and you have the resources to do it, you can damn well keep people from ever getting together in a public place. All right? If you take away their ability to use social media and instant communication, but you have that, you can pretty much guarantee it will never happen. Right? So the viability of a resistance movement succeeding outside of the confines of the power structure as defined in Lazarus so far, my God, I sound professorial. I
love it.
Is really very, very limited. It's why the free has to operate very much in these very limited cells, because they really cannot coordinate a communication system. Because they simply don't have access to the apparatus or the technology. All that's already owned. The other guys have it. So basically, Carlyle and their forces have, smartphones, and the best that the free can manage is maybe Pony Express.
Yeah.
And right there's the problem. So.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not good. I gotta tell you, it's not a happy world. I was dealing with some serious. Lazarus comes out of a very deep and long-running depression that I was dealing with. I mean, in all honesty, it comes out of some of the darkest places of my psyche. There are things that we have not shown. If you can think of a horrible way to exploit another human being, odds are it's happening.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know why this book it resonated so much with me. When he can tell you, I wouldn't shut off about it when I read it. I was like, read it. I loved it so much. And I loved the world building in the back of
that's what
individual
really
issues
grabbed me from even from the first issue is how complete. I think we've said that after the first issue too. We're like, man, this world just feels so complete already, and it's only been one issue.
Yeah.
You think maybe Greg's thought about it a little bit?
Just a bit.
Yeah, just for a second.
I think maybe you did a little research.
Yeah. And a titch. A titch.
Just a titch. A titch. I like how you're like, and the 12 families, and you name them all. I can't even, well, it means
I can't name 12 members of my family.
I was thinking, and then
no, I do far better on stuff that I make up, right? I can barely remember where I need to be in an hour, but, I can tell you exactly what the Vasilovka family made their money doing. I can give you that. I can give you that just like that. It's really rather sad, honestly.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I can remember when, like in Mass Effect when Garrus and I met, but I can't remember.
That's exactly it. Some things matter.
Exactly, it's important.
That makes perfect sense.
So, for you viewers, if you haven't read Lazarus, if you don't run out and buy it today, I would be surprised because this has been.
We will have failed.
No, this has been like such. I just hit the microphone, which I'm not supposed to do. This has been this has been such a great discussion. It's exactly what this class is about. It's talking about how social issues today and everything you're talking about is impacting your writing, and it's absolutely exactly what's happening, and that's what makes this book so intriguing, because even though some of it seems like, oh, we're not there yet, but this could happen. I'm pointing to the book, so when I say this could happen, so it's amazing. It's an amazing book, and I am so glad you wrote it. I'm sorry about the depression that made you write this, but
I'm better.
Yes. Yes.
But we benefit from your depression.
There you go.
Yes, from your suffering.
Yeah.
There you go. It is that not the purpose of art. So.
Exactly. So we have taken up more of your time than we said, but it was so wonderful, and I appreciate you getting up early in the morning and doing this and taking part again in the SuperMOOC. We just appreciate it so much. It's
been a delight, and call me for the next one.
Absolutely.
Right
Absolutely. What cons are you going to be at next?
I am not doing any this summer. I think Rose City Comic Con in Portland is my next one. And I know I'll do Emerald City next year, barring horrible complications. And I am maybe going to Spain for a show. Yes, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, I've hit a point with the shows where it's like, and you know how this is. You lose the travel. You don't get any work done when you're there. You come back exhausted, so you lose recovery time. If I am not invited to a show at this point, I kind of like there's really no need for me to attend it. So it depends on what I get invited to more than anything these days. So.
I totally understand that. We're totally cutting back on cons next year.
Yeah,
because
you just lose too much time. So.
Yes, you do. And now that I totally understand that now that I'm writing too. So it's just like, oh, wait, I have to get this done too?
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, Jason, I totally appreciate it. Jason's going to be talking about this all day. So.
Well, it's been a great pleasure. I want to thank you guys again for inviting me, and I want to say thank you for everybody who actually had questions. So. Well,
thank you. We had more, but we just didn't get to them. So. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. You guys take care.
We'll see you on the boards.
You will. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.